Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to speak Finnish, and that isn't something I can do yet. We believe in lifelong learning, so there's still time. One of the things I want to say first is it's a privilege to be here and to be talking to you. I've been working in the music industry for rather a long time, but mainly in development. I've been in formal education, consultancy, and community learning. Those three areas together have given me the background to be able to set up this program, CLOCK. And if you happen to work for a major company or you're in a network of professional association, you often get personal and professional development. If you're freelance and you're doing project to project or you're running your own enterprise, you very rarely get the opportunity to understand how to develop yourself and your skills within the industry. You do it every day through what you do. You don't actually see how far you've gone. And so CLOCK is a way of being able to measure your journey, the knowledge and skills you've acquired through all the things you've done. If you hold that on one side and then you look on the other side about how many young people want to get into the creative industries, the music industry as an example, where they go to a university course that just provides them with a subject or a discipline, and they have no idea how to transfer that into the workplace. And so part of what CLOCK is doing is providing an alternative way and a set of stairs for people who want to learn through doing to be able to get the same accreditation as the people who are able to manage and excel in a formal education situation. So I'm just going to give you an overview of the CLOCK program, how it works and how it runs. And it's people like you who are practitioners working in an industry that deliver the CLOCK program to your peers and to the younger generation and the newer generation who might join later in life, who are coming in to the music industry and the creative industries. So the difference between the way you learn in the CLOCK program is it's situated learning is the terminology. And what that means is you're learning in places like this. You are actually somewhere that is the right context for the job you're doing. You're in a studio, you're in a rehearsal room, you're in a concert hall, you're in a gig. Wherever you are, it's where you're working. You're selling tickets, you're making merchandise, you're doing all the things you do. That's situated learning. You are never in a classroom. Okay, so that's the first thing. As I said, many of us collect skills as we go on. The reason this is called CLOCK is because cars clock up miles, so as they're going on their journeys, human beings clock up skills. So it's clock your skills. Clock also is a South London, which is where I come from, the term I've seen something. I just clocked him in the front row. That clock is the same thing. We are clocking our skills. We are seeing them. So we're discovering our current capabilities. I may have left formal education with a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, level 6. It doesn't matter. What are my current capabilities right now? What CLOCK does is looks at the capabilities you have right now. So you are actually going to discover those by doing a CLOCK program. And believe me, those skills are invisible to us. People understand what we can do, and many people go, oh, I'm just sorting this out. And this is a highly complex, confused mess that you know how to sort out. And everyone knows that you know how to sort that out, and that's why they ask you to do the job. And what CLOCK does is give you the way, the framework to be able to map those skills and capabilities. Many people without formal certification feel that they either can't leave their employer or that they can't change and transfer into another industry or go into, say, teaching in a formal environment without the certification. So the other thing that CLOCK does is it provides you with a pivot into formal certification. You do a CLOCK award, you get the digital awards, which are an industry peer review, but you also get the formal certification if you want to have that. And that formal certification can be used. It's based on the European Qualifications Framework and 3 other frameworks that we map to. So it's an opportunity for people in mid-career to look at their professional development. They've built up the knowledge and skills, and they've built up the experience of being in a number of different contexts. And that transferability of the skills that often mid-career people have got is extremely valuable, not only to the current industry that you're working in, but also other industries. And so CLOCK is involved in that professional development, which makes you look at, well, how do my personal values and my professional values align in this part of my life? And what is it? I know I can do that, but have I had enough of doing that? Do I want to be doing something else? It helps you look at what you've got and then where you can go. The other thing about CLOCK is an international program. It runs across the world. It's in Europe, Australia. We've got our first one in New Zealand in September, Washington, the Middle East, and it is a neutral cultural program. It means that people can enter it showing what they do. There isn't a curriculum. In fact, CLOCK, the word, comes from collaborative learning, open curriculum, KIT, which means that you can use anything that you do. There is no other curriculum than the one that you have just been doing. And we call that CLOCK going backwards. CLOCK going forwards is where you're filling in skills gaps. You identify, no one comes as an empty jug. You just literally see where their level of skills is, identify the gaps, and then fill them. We call that CLOCK going forward. And that's based in places like this. So part of our mission is about inspiring young people to come into the creative industries and also including people who are not traditionally included. And one of the key things, as I said earlier, is the transferable skills element. The creative sector, if you look at the World Economic Forum report in October 2020, it talked about the top 15 skills of the future. All 15 are delivered by creative context and learning. So we're ahead of the game for new societies if we're in the creative industries. So what's the difference between formal education and what CLOCK does? There is a huge difference. In a way, CLOCK is not education and it's not industry. It's in the space in between. But it operates like industry in a community of practice. We might call that a network. We've all got our networks for projects. We've got our networks that we know who to call when something's going wrong. We know who we can rely on. We know who's going to give us a break. We know whose next project we're going to be on because of our network. So that is social capital, that network. So that network is a community of practice. And that can be just one practice, like music, or it could be the way independent games use game designers. People who write non-linear music rather than linear music can actually be able to transfer. They just need to understand the software and the process. So all of this transferability is around us as creatives. So let's look at the difference then between formal education and this CLOCK thing. So in formal education, education is done to you. You go through a process. It comes from the Latin verb educare, to lead through. You're led through a process of formal education, or you're a consumer of a course that you want to do. And if you look at what CLOCK is, the learner is a participant in a community of practice. It's very different. You're there because you want to be in that industry. You're getting involved as someone who does something. So you're coming with wanting to do something and being able to do it and getting better at it. The focus in formal education is a teacher delivery. You've got a curriculum, you've got a timetable, and the learner has to do the practice and study. And the focus in the community of practice is that you're on the edges at the beginning. You can't do a lot, but you can do a bit. And the idea is that you go in towards the centre and increase the participation you're able to do, and then start to lead, start to facilitate others as you develop. If you look at formal education, it's standardised learner testing. You do the test, whether it's coursework, exams, and then you're evaluated in that. In CLOCK, it is a self-reflection, a peer reflection, and an expert that does the guiding. And that is always done in reflective practice. So you're doing something and then you're reviewing what you've done. What didn't work, what did work, how did that go? And then if you look at the learner goal for formal education is, I want a first or a 2-1. I want to finish my degree. I'm competing with that group of people in order to get the best marks I possibly can. In CLOCK, we don't do this testing, it's contextualised. You're in the environments where you would be working, and it's dynamic because you can't control that. Things happen. If you're doing a gig and then you're touring and you leave something behind in the last venue, you haven't got it, so it's different. You need to then work out, do we get another one? How do we solve that? So it's dynamic, and it's whole person learning. How are you with, when things get tough, how are you to work with, right? When things are really going well, how easy are you to work with? What happens, the whole person of you is in the room, and your professionalism sometimes slips when things get tough. How do you deal with that in a community? So again, formal education, 4 to 5 years to get from degree to master's. CLOCK, what time will it take you to fill the gaps? If you've already got everything, CLOCK going backwards gives you that recognition, and any gaps you fill it. So it takes the time that it takes you to meet the level that we're looking at. In terms of, are you a advanced trainee? Are you work ready? Are you a competent practitioner? Could we wind you up and let you go, whether you're employed, self-employed, or running your own business? Or are you a sector expert who's got sufficient breadth and depth of experience and practice to be able to mentor and coach the next generation coming through? Or are you someone who's been in the industry for years and you've done this legacy where other people have taken your thought leadership and they're actioning it, they're actually doing it? We call that a CLOCK industry champion. So often the people who are delivering the programme are coming from a background of theory, or at least some of them are part-time practitioners, but they're working as teachers in higher education or formal education. And what you are doing in CLOCK is you're learning in the practice context with your peers. How did you do that? Could you just show me how you did that? Because I got the first bit, but I didn't get the second bit. So in a peer-to-peer learning environment, you are going through this process. And you've got sector experts who go, why did you do that like that? Trying to work out what your thought process is to go, I've done this song. We were just having a conversation in the car. I've done this song. I think it's finished. Actually, it's not really started. The craft you then need to do, you've got the outline, you've got the rough. How do you move beyond that? And why do you do that rather than that? Those are the things you learn in practice context. The other thing is, the way you talk in a formal education context is you're talking and learning about the relevant practice. So you're talking about something. When you're actually in a community of practice, you're learning to talk to other practitioners. You're using the language of the practice. You need to understand what the words are to explain what's happening. And you're talking to them, and they're explaining to you their world based on the practice. So you're talking to other practitioners. You're learning in formal education, academic, generic, and the skills that are not in the same context necessarily. Even when you've got a higher education studio, there may be rules that are not the same as the one if you're going into a professional studio. and the way in which it's operated. You often have like sofas around the studio where you're watching somebody else do it and supposed to pick that up. So that process of using those skills in context and learning this community know-how is what you're doing. So often access to formal education is based on what previous level you were. And so you can't often access something. So one of our CLOCK sector experts left school at age 10 and basically then worked and ran a charity, got involved in carnival production, is a theatre director and producer. And so he couldn't go on because he hasn't done a degree, he hasn't even got the secondary school education qualifications or high school. So that access is actually conditional, and with CLOCK it's open. Anyone can come in. We run a programme in London called the Music Industry Skills Bootcamp. There are 3 questions to get on that programme. Are you over 19? Yes. Do you live in London? Yes. Do you have a national insurance number? Yes. You're in. So it's absolutely flat. And in the diversity of that group, we have 104 learners just starting next week. It will be chaos. So that's brilliant. Then the cohort in a formal education are treated as one level. You're level 4, you're level 5, you're level 6, right? Because you're going through this process. In the CLOCK community of practice, you can be any level. We have people who are sector experts working with advanced trainees, working with people who are just beginning because they've got a passion, they think they want to sing or mix or whatever it is, produce. And it's like that. You find the level of where they are, but we operate as a community. And so you're treated as a collective and a specific resource. So ones who are more experienced help coach the other ones and so on. You have Higher Education Institute validated outcomes for certification in formal education. That's what they're doing. And we have exactly the same in CLOCK. You can get a postgraduate certificate. You can get a level 4, a level 5, and so on, EQF. So that's no different. I did look at the latest statistics, and this is just in the UK, these figures. So the Higher Education Statistical Analysis talks about jobs that come out of higher education. And the average was 36% for all jobs that were reported back to the universities in the UK, who were music specific. This boot camp lasts for 12 weeks and is mixed levels, and the outcomes for that, which someone told me because I wasn't aware, were 48% music industry jobs. So why is that? Because it's run by industry. There are no educators involved. It's industry training people for industry. And it's what is really surprising is no one else is doing that for their industry. So then the last bit is access to industry networks after the programme. Many complaints that students make are that, well, after the course, there wasn't anyone. I got one tutor help me get a contact or something, but actually there wasn't really access to networks. And they asked the same question about CLOCK, access to industry networks. It is industry. You just ring any of the sector experts up. If you need to work you're going on tour to the Netherlands and you want to meet with somebody over there, the network is there. So that's a lot of detail, I know, but I think it's worth saying. I sound like I'm against formal education. I'm a product of formal education. I'm not against it. It's that there are different ways of learning, and there needs to be pathways that support the different ways of learning. And also the recognition and the access are issues as far as we're concerned at CLOCK. So, as a mid-career professional in the creative industries, which I can see many of you will fit that, you could have all of the skills you've got recognised through this international programme. And what that will do is demonstrate not just your practice skills, but the way you problem solve, your advocacy activities, the continuing professional development that you've thought of as, well, I haven't been on a course, yeah, but you regularly meet up with someone and you both talk about your work practice, or you go on a conference, or you go to an exhibition, or you go to a series of gigs and you're learning, and that's continuing professional development. It doesn't have to be a course. It's non-formal, and CLOCK is non-formal. But we will also highlight these transferable skills and help you to align your personal and professional goals. One of the examples I often give is that many women who do technology, when they first get into the workplace, they get on. As soon as they're starting to do well, they often work to support other women coming into technology, and they mean to do it for a couple of years. But what happens is they're so good at it and it's so effective that they spend 10 years and then they think, oh my God, I haven't actually been doing my career. I've actually been supporting others, and now I want to just go for it. So there are different spaces that we get into because, one, we're comfortable, but two, we're also doing something of value. But there are other values, and looking at your personal and professional goals, you begin to see whether these are really aligned for this part of your career. So if you're a sector expert, you'll obviously get the professional award and certificate at postgraduate level, which you can use to then access the rest of the masters if you want to. But you also have the opportunity to be a CLOCK peer reviewer. Now, the CLOCK peer reviewer is the person who is running the CLOCK programs. And you cannot get a CLOCK award just in one country. It has to be benchmarked by another country. So you have a peer reviewer 1 who would be in Finland, and you have a peer reviewer 2 who could be in Australia, the Middle East, another European country, the States, New Zealand, and they benchmark what people have done. So if I'm working with one of you as a candidate, and we call people doing CLOCK candidates, we would work with you, I would mentor you, go through the process, we do it, and the other person from the same sector in another country will then go, yeah, I recognise that, yeah, I recognise that, I recognise that. That's at the level that I believe it should be. And that's like an internal verification process that you would have in formal education. So that offers a role, because it's not like teaching, it's something where you're paid to be a peer reviewer, to take someone through the programme, and if you've got 3 tours or you've got all this other stuff and project work, you're going, I can't do a lot of that, that's fine. It's completely flexible, you can dial it up and dial it down based on what you're doing, and that could be personal responsibilities as well as tours and work. So I'm constantly out there recruiting in every country for peer reviewers. So that was a little advert for that. So if anyone fancies getting involved in this CLOCK community, then please, you can drop me a line via the end of this. It's just denise@clockyourskills.com. So joining our community of practice as a candidate or as a potential peer reviewer, you will have access to our network across the world. So that's useful when you're meeting these peer reviewer 2s that you're working with, but we also have quarterly events where we might be talking about what's happening in AI from a business point of view in Finland, what's happening in Melbourne or Brisbane, or what's happening in Saudi, or what's happening here. So you've got access to that network to get that intelligence about what's going on. And also, if you've got a band, there are festivals everywhere. You can talk about, well, let's talk about potentially doing that. So, just to talk more about the content in this CLOCK setup, this was designed by employers and contractors and people who are working, the creative practitioners. And what they said is, for the industry, for the creative industries, including music, you need 3 things. You need practice, because you've got to be able to do things, right? So whatever that is, sound engineering, artist management, songwriting, touring, live events, all of that. You need the practice. But you also, for the workplace, need to be able to share knowledge and skills. So what does that mean? Collaborate with a team, share the knowledge that the board want to understand, share the knowledge the audience want to understand, share the skills if you need to share them more widely or broadly. And then something which is only in CLOCK, I have not seen anywhere else in the world, is something we call developing social potential. And developing social potential is based on you're building social capital. So therefore, you're doing things like inclusion, you're doing things like ensuring you don't dump your costs on the commons. And by that I mean, there are two good examples of that. You don't burn your staff out or your team out because you're then giving the health service that value, right? You're just taking it out of your people, dumping them, and the health people, the health service are picking that up. That's externalizing costs. Exactly the same with the planet. If you're not thinking about life cycle of products, services, then you're giving the commons, the rest of the world, the job of tidying up after you. So that developing social potential works in a lot of different ways. And health and well-being of your team and yourself are really important in that. So what are the levels? So CLOCK, if you start, level 1 is right at the beginning of the European qualifications framework. It's the first qualification that they talk about. We want to bring new people into the creative industries. We want people to understand the value of it. We want to expand and extend what we do. And so we want people to be inspired to do it. So the first one is an explorer, where someone tries something for new. So the first time, I might not have access to instruments at home, musical instruments. So an explorer gives you the program at CLOCK. Try things out. Try a violin. Try a double bass. Try a keyboard. Try a banjo. Actually try something that you want to do. Mouth organ. I should have played the mouth organ and not the double bass. It was always a problem to transport them. I envy mouth organ players. Anyway, so the explorer, we need to do that, right? Level 1, get people inspired to do. Don't talk about it, don't show it, do it. Have a go. If it doesn't work, try something else. So that's 1. Level 2 now, your passion is the guitar, right? Here's the guitar. That guitar, if I'm going to be an active participant of CLOCK, I need to commit to develop that guitar playing for 2 years. So I've got my passion, it's the guitar, I've explored it, I've got it. Now I'm going to learn it. I'm going to try the acoustic, the rock, the genres. I'm going to tune it. I'm going to understand how to change the tuning and play the chord in the strings. And I'm going to do all the things, all the different shapes. And I am going to show you that I'm learning from YouTube. I might have a tutor. I could be in a group. We're in a band, whatever it is. You are doing it. You are committed to do this practice for 2 years. You build a portfolio, just like in every CLOCK program, of what you've done. And then the next level is training, resourceful training. At the moment, a trainee is such a narrow word. It's like an apprenticeship or something. This is not that. What this is, so let's stick with guitar. What can I do in a career with a guitar? Oh, I could be in a band. It's the one I think of first. I could also be a music therapist using guitar. Oh, I could be a session player in guitar. Oh, I could actually maintain guitars. I could be a tech on stage doing guitars. I could build guitars. And so what you're doing is uncovering all the opportunities based on your passion, followed by your commitment to your investigation of what you really would like to do. Now, you're not even in industry yet. You're at level 3, right? You're thinking about what to do next. You've suddenly got this superpower based on your passion, commitment, and then you go, oh, I want to be a session musician. oh, I can't read music. Oh God, well I better just learn how to read music. So you start to focus your skill set to suit the opportunities that are out there in level 3. And then that is our Life-Wide Learning Awards. They work effectively in CLOCK with ice skating, with any practice, but we're focusing here on the music industry and the creative industries. So you then go into the next level, which are our professional awards. An advanced trainee says, you are work ready, but you still need supervision. So you can fit into the community of work. Notice we're not talking about a subject. We're talking about understanding how to be in a work environment, and the skills we've got still need to be developed. Level 5 is the competent practitioner, as I said earlier. Level 7, the sector expert, that's master's level. And the CLOCK industry champion, we call it the CLOCK-dorate because it's equivalent to a PhD. So I've got some people on the website to do some, testimonials, right? And I looked at them last night and I thought, actually, I want to do like an advert on television, before CLOCK and after CLOCK. What's the difference? And so I was looking at the testimonials and seeing if I could actually just pull out what people have said. So I'm just going to go through a few because they're quite different. So before, I'd taken my skills, knowledge and experience for granted. And then after, I've seen the unique value in my skills, knowledge and experience. Before, I didn't understand myself, my practice or how I develop. After, I now help others to reflect, reveal and spotlight their unique practice. Before, I was a dropout who survived by being creative. After, I'm in an inspiring CLOCK community and I have a master's. I had a low salary because I had no formal higher education. After, my boss doubled my salary because I have a postgrad. Before, unaware of practical skills developed in creative work. After, I've got skills awareness that's facilitated my next career decision. I often say that when people do CLOCK, it's like they've got a jacket that everyone knows that they wear. It's like a favourite jacket, and everyone knows them for that jacket. And what happens in CLOCK is to take the jacket off, look at it, dust it down, fold it up, put it away and get a new jacket and go like a rocket into the next career decision that they're making, because they feel empowered, confident, and they can articulate exactly what they can do. So this is really important, that these are people who are practicing musicians, and what they're doing is understanding how they can use their capabilities to go in other places. And some people just want to stay the same. They want a certificate or they want a master's and they want to go into teaching, and there's a pivot. So every individual is coming in for different reasons. So the one that says, before there was no map for personal and professional growth, right? And now I've found an international community of creatives that feels like home. That's what they wanted out of the CLOCK programme. Someone worked in the music industry as an innovator in an NGO. Now she works as head of strategy and innovation in Creative Victoria in Australia. So people who didn't know how to support others, who was a mentor, basically have got guidelines and a vision that they use. So people discover things, they discover themselves. The one I mentioned before was the guy who left school at 10 years old. He graduated with a master's and he now does international project management for creative and cultural work. So, thanks for listening.